I had everything money could buy: mansions, cars, women at my beck and call. For years, I treated love like a game with disposable players. Then I met her. One strong-willed black woman who saw through my facade and refused to play by my rules. She didn't change me. She saved me. I built my first $1 million company before I turned 30. By 35, I owned 3 homes, 6 luxury cars, and enough designer clothes to never wear the same outfit twice in a month. I'm James Carter, CEO of Carter Investments, and for years I treated relationships the same way I treated business deals: something to win, extract value from, then move on without attachment. Women were drawn to my wealth, my power, my lifestyle, and I was perfectly fine with that arrangement. Every weekend was another exclusive party, another beautiful face, another temporary distraction. Champagne flowed like water in my penthouse overlooking the city. I had everything, or so I thought. What no one saw was how I'd return to that empty penthouse at night, surrounded by expensive things that meant nothing. The silence was deafening. I never let anyone stay long enough to see beneath the carefully crafted image. Until Vanessa walked into my life and refused to be impressed by anything except authenticity, something I hadn't offered anyone in years. Stay with me as I reveal how the walls I built around my heart came crashing down in the most unexpected way, and how a woman who saw right through me became the one thing all my money couldn't buy. I didn't start out wealthy. Growing up in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago, I watched my father work 60-hour weeks just to keep us comfortable. He'd come home exhausted, arguing with my mother about bills and savings. Their marriage was a battlefield of financial stress. I swore I'd never let money, or the lack of it, control my life that way. By 25, I dropped out of business school to launch my first tech startup. 3 years of sleepless nights, skipped meals, and relentless hustle paid off when we sold for 8 figures. The validation was intoxicating. Money didn't just buy comfort, it bought respect, access, and attention, especially female attention. My dating pattern was methodical. 3 months maximum, no exceptions. I had it down to a science: lavish gifts, exclusive restaurants, weekend getaways to tropical locations. Women would fall into a predictable rhythm of expecting more. Commitment, deeper connection, talk of the future. That's when I'd end things. Clean break, generous parting gift, move on. My friends called me calculated. I called myself efficient. Emotions complicate business decisions, I'd say, like it was some profound philosophy instead of a defense mechanism. My closest friend Marcus would shake his head. Man, you treat your heart like another investment portfolio. He wasn't wrong. I live by rules: never sleep over, never meet families, never discuss a future. The pattern worked perfectly until it didn't, until the emptiness started showing up even with someone new beside me. The women all started looking the same: beautiful, impressed by wealth, and ultimately forgettable. I kept increasing the stakes, the luxury, the exclusivity, but that hollow feeling followed me everywhere, from Saint-Tropez to Tokyo, from penthouse to private jet. I was the richest man I knew, and somehow still bankrupt where it mattered. It was at the Harrison Foundation Gala, another black-tie charity event where the wealthy patted themselves on the back for donating what amounted to pocket change. I was bored before I even arrived. These events all blurred together. Same faces, same small talk, same pretension. I was nursing a whiskey at the bar when I first saw her. Vanessa Moore stood out immediately. Not because she was trying to, quite the opposite. In a room of designer gowns and diamond-draped necks, she wore a simple black dress with a single pearl necklace. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo that framed her face perfectly. But it was her laugh that caught my attention: genuine, uninhibited, lacking the practiced politeness that echoed around these events. She was speaking with the charity's director, gesturing passionately about something. I later learned she was an education advocate who'd helped develop the after-school programs the foundation was funding. Not a socialite or someone's plus one, she was there because her work mattered. I approached with my usual confidence, introducing myself with the practiced charm that had never failed me. "James Carter," I said, extending my hand. "I don't believe we've met." The look she gave me was one I wasn't accustomed to, assessment rather than immediate impression. "Vanessa Moore," she replied, her handshake firm and brief. "And no, we haven't." No flicker of recognition at my name, no subtle shift in posture to signal interest, just direct eye contact that made me feel unexpectedly transparent. "I was just telling Robert about the impact statistics from our first year," she continued, turning back to the director without missing a beat. She hadn't dismissed me exactly, but she hadn't welcomed my interruption either. For the first time in years, I felt oddly invisible despite being the wealthiest man in the room. Instead of irritating me, it fascinated me. Here was someone operating entirely outside the orbit of my influence. I couldn't get Vanessa out of my head. The next day, I had my assistant find her contact information, a move that usually felt strategic, but now seemed desperate. I sent an elaborate flower arrangement to her office, with an invitation to dinner at Maison, the Michelin-starred restaurant where I had a standing private table. Her response came via email, not the expected gushing phone call. "Thank you for the flowers. Though they're quite excessive, I'm unavailable for dinner." 6 words. No explanation, no suggested alternative. I was stunned. No one said no to me anymore. I doubled down, securing tickets to Hamilton, reportedly impossible to get, and sent the invitation through a courier. This time, she called. "Mr. Carter, while I appreciate the gesture, I don't accept expensive gifts from men I've barely spoken to for 5 minutes." "It's just theatre tickets," I countered. "It's a pattern I've seen before," she replied evenly. "I'm not interested in being anyone's temporary fascination." Her directness was both refreshing and maddening. I tried a different approach. "What about coffee, then?" "A public place, daytime, no strings or expectations." A pause. "Coffee I can do. Thursday at 2 p.m., Riverfront Cafe." Not my personal chef preparing brunch at my penthouse, but a modest cafe in her neighborhood. She was dictating terms, another first. I arrived 15 minutes early to find her already there, reading a book, not waiting anxiously like others might have been. Our conversation was unlike any first date I'd had in years. She asked about my business, but seemed more interested in my thoughts than my net worth. When I mentioned my recent donation to an arts foundation, she asked pointed questions about its impact measurement strategies. She didn't laugh at my practiced jokes. Instead, she smiled when I said something genuinely funny, something unplanned. "You're different with the script turned off," she observed, catching me completely off guard. How had she seen through me so quickly when everyone else saw only what I presented? As we parted, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in years, asking sincerely, almost nervously, "Can I see you again?" 3 coffee dates turned into dinner, at her suggestion, finally. Not at Maison, but at a small Ethiopian restaurant owned by a family she knew. I watched her greet them in their language, just a few phrases she'd learned to show respect. The owners treated her like family, bringing special dishes not on the menu. I was used to VIP treatment, but this was different, warmth earned through genuine connection, not purchased with status. "You seem uncomfortable," she noted as we ate with our hands, traditional style. "I'm more used to 7 forks and a sommelier," I admitted. "And I've sat through those dinners too," she replied, "but tell me which food you'll remember longer." She was right. I'd had $1,000 meals I couldn't recall a week later. Over injera and Doro Wat, she told me about growing up in Oakland, her parents both educators who emphasized service over accumulation, how she'd navigated predominantly white institutions on scholarship, facing both subtle and overt racism while building her nonprofit. People assume I must be from poverty because I'm black and working in education, she said. They can't imagine I simply chose purpose over profit. I found myself sharing things I'd told no one, how lonely success had become, how empty the endless cycle of acquisition felt. Sometimes I buy things just to feel something, I confessed. Instead of the sympathy or admiration I expected, she looked at me with a directness that made me want to look away. That's incredibly sad, James, she said simply. Not because you're broken, but because you've built your entire life around running from connection. Her words hit me like physical pain. No one spoke to me that way anymore. Everyone either wanted something from me or wanted to be me. Do you actually like who you are? She asked, not accusingly, but with genuine curiosity. I opened my mouth to give my standard confident response, but what came out instead surprised us both. I don't know anymore. In that moment of unexpected honesty, I felt more exposed than if I'd been physically naked. Yet instead of vulnerability feeling like weakness, it felt like the first real thing I'd done in years. Dating Vanessa wasn't like any relationship I'd known. She had non-negotiable boundaries, no lavish gifts to impress her, no using wealth to solve problems, no expectation that her time was more flexible than mine. When I instinctively tried to take control, arranging surprise trips, or sending my driver without asking, she'd firmly decline. My agency matters to me, she explained. Ask first, always. I found myself doing things I'd never done, browsing farmers' markets on Sunday mornings, attending community theatre instead of Broadway, sitting in on the youth poetry workshops she ran. The kids treated her with a reverence no amount of money could buy. The differences in our experiences became clear in unexpected moments. When a store security guard followed us, I was oblivious until she whispered, "This happens every time I shop here." When I got immediate attention from staff while she was ignored, I finally began to see the invisible systems I'd benefited from without awareness. Her friends became a window into a world where authenticity trumped achievement. They debated politics, art, and justice with passion. They asked me challenging questions not about my business, but about my beliefs. Initially uncomfortable, I gradually found myself drawn to their realness. Slowly, I stopped evaluating experiences by their exclusivity and started measuring them by their meaning. The performance of success that had structured my entire adult life began feeling hollow compared to genuine connection. For the first time, I wasn't playing a role. I was simply being. 6 months into our relationship, my company faced a hostile takeover attempt. My instinct was to retreat into work mode, cancel dates, ignore calls, bury myself in strategy sessions. The old pattern of shutting down emotionally under pressure kicked in automatically. 3 days into my disappearance, Vanessa showed up at my office at 11 p.m. with food from our Ethiopian spot, not to demand attention, but to sit quietly while I worked. "You don't have to handle this alone," she said simply. When I snapped at her the next day, stress making me cruel, she didn't take the bait. "I understand you're under pressure, but I won't be your emotional punching bag. Call me when you can speak respectfully." I panicked as she walked out. My wealth and power couldn't make her stay. For the first time, I realized what I truly stood to lose, not just a girlfriend, but the one person who saw me completely and stayed anyway. The company situation worsened. Board members suggested cutting the education initiative I'd launched inspired by Vanessa's work, the one thing I'd done that wasn't solely profit-driven. It was the obvious business decision. Standing in my empty penthouse that night, I faced the mirror and didn't recognize the man looking back. Was I still the person who would sacrifice anything for the bottom line? Or had I finally found someone worth more than another zero in my bank account? I called an emergency board meeting the next morning. For the first time, my decision wouldn't just be about money. I walked into that board meeting with a clarity I'd never felt in business before. "The education initiative stays," I told them. "In fact, we're expanding it." The room erupted in protests about fiscal responsibility and shareholder value. For years, we've defined value purely by quarterly returns, I countered. But I'm proposing a more sustainable definition of success. I presented a restructuring that protected our core mission while fighting off the takeover. It wasn't the safest financial play, but it was the right one. That evening, I went to Vanessa's apartment, a modest place she loved, despite my offers to upgrade her living situation. I told her about my decision and apologized for disappearing when things got difficult. It's not about the decision itself, she said, taking my hands. It's that you're finally integrating who you are with what you do. That's the man I've been seeing glimpses of all along. 6 months later, our education initiative was thriving. I'd stepped back from micromanaging the company to focus on impact-driven projects. For the first time, my wealth felt like a tool for change rather than a scorekeeping system. Vanessa taught me that true intimacy isn't weakness, it's the ultimate strength. That vulnerability doesn't diminish power, it transforms it into something meaningful. That seeing someone fully, including their struggles, as a Black woman navigating predominantly white spaces, doesn't threaten my own identity, but enriches it. I still have the trappings of success, but they're no longer the source of my worth. My relationship with Vanessa isn't about possession or conquest. It's about growing together in purpose and love. Today marks 2 years since that fateful gala where I met the woman who would completely redefine my understanding of wealth. Vanessa and I now live in a home we chose together, smaller than my penthouse but filled with warmth, art from local creators, and plenty of room for the community gatherings she loves to host. The designer furniture is gone, replaced by pieces with stories and meaning. Last month, we launched the Moore Carter Foundation, focusing on educational equity in underserved communities. Working alongside Vanessa, seeing her brilliant mind in action as we build something meaningful together, it's a fulfillment no acquisition or merger ever gave me. And yes, we're engaged now. The ring isn't the flawless status symbol I would have chosen before. It's her grandmother's stone reset in a design we created together, carrying history and promise. I still catch myself slipping into old patterns sometimes, thinking money can solve everything, trying to control outcomes, keeping emotions at bay when things get intense. The difference is, now I recognize it happening. Vanessa doesn't fix these moments for me. She holds space while I do the work myself. The man who once calculated the exact duration of relationships now looks forward to decades of growth with one extraordinary woman. My definition of success has fundamentally changed. True wealth isn't what you can acquire. It's who you become when you're brave enough to let someone see you fully. It's the courage to tear down walls instead of building more impressive ones. If you're watching this and recognize yourself in my story, constantly achieving yet never satisfied, surrounded yet fundamentally alone, ask yourself what you're really winning. Subscribe to see more stories of transformation, and remember, your net worth and your self-worth don't have to be calculated on the same spreadsheet. The richest I've ever felt was the day I realized love isn't a transaction. It's a gift you become worthy of by giving it freely.